Good afternoon. Welcome to Outlaw Video and Radio. My name is Bruce. For the longest time, Karen and I considered the fact that we would not touch the political issues that are going on, and we had a sudden change of heart. Donald Trump has clearly stated now that his aims and objectives are to crush the Canadian economy and destroy our sovereignty to annex us to become the 51st state. I don't want to see this happen. I think it can be very close to happening, but I think Canadians as a whole just do not want to take the chance of losing Medicare and some of the other things that we've built around. The problem of this stems about the fact is that our economies are incredibly intertwined. Canada put all its eggs in one basket when it signed the FTA, which is the Free Trade Agreement, and then the NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement, and then finally the WTO, which literally shut the door and moved actually all the major economic activity in terms of manufacturing offshore to China, India, and Indochina, with the exception of the factories that were already in Mexico. You see, the problem with these agreements were they were all corporate agreements, and therefore the Canadian people as a whole derive no benefit. Only corporations and the oligarchs as we know them today as their wealth continued to increase. This problem actually begins in 1986. Before that, both engines of both economies, both the United States and the USA, were chugging right along. But I don't think that was good enough. And corporations and Ronald Reagan and even Mr. Mulroney at the time, who trusted the corporate mentality totally, decided that they would give them basically free rein, and that's what they took. And this is what leaves us today where we are now, with a man who, like just any other before, is one of the symptoms of what we have created. However, in this case, the symptom is much more larger and much more threatening to the sovereignty of a great many countries, as we've now seen. I think when you understand, and I mean a lot of kids or people who are younger than me won't, because if you were born after 1986 when all this stuff began to transpire, then you probably wouldn't remember what the economies and how well they were managed and how well they were driven worked. So it's sad today, and I'd like to think that there's a lot more that we can do. But Canada only has a population of 40 million people, which is under the population of the state of California. So we're up against a giant, and I think Canada has to explore things like joining the European Union or other such measures to ensure that their economy is shored up, because this is going to be a battle. Don't ever kid yourself, this is going to be a battle. And for those who don't think that we're anywhere close to Europe, the islands of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, which are French territory, are off the coast of PEI. And don't even think for a second that the European Union would not be interested in bringing Canada on board with its vast resources and wealth and minerals and oil and natural gas. It's important that we realize that what is going on here is technically illegal, but it doesn't seem to matter because nobody seems to be paying a lot of attention to what is going on. You're not hearing the United Nations screaming. You're not hearing Europe screaming, except to protect, of course, the interests of the European Economic Community. And I think that's rather unfortunate because people have got to stand up to this guy because he's a bully. That's all he is. And to negotiate with him is impossible because his mind shifts and he goes on to these tangents all the time. But the fact of the matter is that he wants to make Canada the 51st state. That is very real. And we have to treat it as such and start preparing for the fact that this is going to be a long haul, because he is going to try and crush us economically. And it's not going to be that difficult to do. When you take a look around, what do you see? Where we shop? Amazon, Walmart. Even the Hudson's Bay is no longer Canadian. It's an American-owned corporation. All of the things that we buy are basically bought through American companies. And even in our agricultural systems, if you look at our pig barns today or our chicken barns, the farmers don't own any of those chickens. They're all owned by companies. And they buy the farmer buys the feed, they're told how to feed them, what have you, and they ship them. The whole system's just totally out of whack. And Canada has to adjust. And the first thing that Canada can do to adjust is deal with those at the bottom of the economic triangle. The poor, the homeless, the disenfranchised. Those people who are living in squalor, poverty, substandard conditions, tent cities. They're not there because of something that they did. They're there because of something that our government and the corporate lobbyists within, who hold most of the power over these people, have directed them to do. I don't take a lot of faith in any politician anymore, because none of them have acted on behalf of what a Canadian or the Canadian people should be doing. And I include that worldwide, in terms of Europe, in terms of America, because in the United States, they have the same problem we do. There are people living in tent cities, there are people that are homeless, there are people in terrible squalor and substandard conditions. Why? Because we have allowed our politicians to be dictated to by people who are extremely, extremely wealthy. So what do? Well, the first thing, as I said, we have to fix the problem at the bottom. We have to get people off the streets. And I'm sorry, Mr. Poilievre, I know you like to give people the big fantasy, and of course you're a politician, so you do. We're going to own your own house and stuff like that. Most people in this country can't afford to own their own house. I can't afford hardly to keep mine. And that's just the facts of life. But what you can do is nobody should be paying something in the area of $2,500 or $2,600 a month for rent. Nobody at all. If you really want to know where true democratic and economic power are concerned, it's the consumer. The consumer decides what succeeds and what fails. But if they've got no money to purchase the goods and services that provide the jobs to feed the Canadian economy, it doesn't work. And the fact of the matter is I think people in the United States and the people of Canada have to understand that North America is no longer the market. Okay? The big corporations knew that. That's why they got slave labor factories all over the world. Mexico, China, Indochina, India. Why? Because China, Indochina, and India represent over 2/3 of the world's population. They're the marketplace. And they overproduce by a ton. There's more waste in this world in terms of overproduction. And this goes along with our agricultural products as well, with overproduction. And it's just stupid. Okay? So therefore, you have the slaves in the Far East, and you have us who are sitting and suffering. And I can tell you right now, I can think of the American people and the Canadian people that are doing the same. But at no time have I ever heard an American president ever threaten a sovereign nation with economic stagnation. And that's totally wrong. So Canada, let's build and get the hell away from this. Let's fix the problems with our economy by fixing the problems with those who are poor and disadvantaged within our country. Get them on the right track. Get all the services in terms of addiction and mental health services that we need to get this over with.